So when you're selecting nozzles for this particular machine, how do I know which one is right? Well, you see, with all of these pieces of equipment, you'll get a manufacturer's instruction booklet. So there's lots of information in here about what the machine does, what its capacity is, identifies what the model number is, and so forth, what its maximum pressure is, how many litres a minute, what's the maximum temperature input of water you can put in there, suction height 2.5 metres, so it'll suck water. What we said earlier too is try and prevent that, help the machine by assisting it with water pressure feed so that you don't run the risk of cavitation. What it weighs, the recoil, and the recoil at the lance. So that means, here we are, the recoil at the lance. What on earth does that mean? So that's the inertia. That's what pressure comes back onto you from the lance, from the gun itself, when you depress the trigger. So it's 62.8 Newton meters. So luckily, 62.8 Newton meters is well inside the Australian standard as far as inertia or reaction force is concerned. So in relation to what this spec says, it's all quite compliant. If you're unsure about the information that it's given on here, ring the supplier, or of course you can ring the manufacturer, because all the details in relation to who to contact is written on here. Most of the people at BlastOne would be able to help you. So if you ring the service desk and said, look, I'm a bit unsure on this, they'll help you out because they understand what all this chart means. The other aspect of this particular machine too is the nozzle sizing of this particular machine. It's found in several different charts. So let's have a look, 270 bar. If we follow this chart along, it tells us how many litres a minute, which is 16, but it also gives me a range of nozzles. So it says 00045, 15045, 25045, and 40045. What that's relating to is the nozzle sizes in thou, so it's 45 thou, but it's 00045, so that's what we call a pin jet. So that's just one pointy jet like this of water. Then we get a variation again like 15045, 25. Now we're starting to relate to the dwell angle. So that's the fan width within the nozzle itself. So it's 15 degrees, 25 degrees, 40 degrees. So all of these variables are in relation to what the job is and what nozzles are available to me. So it starts from a pin jet, comes out larger, larger, and larger. Why do we have that? Well, it depends on what sort of job you're doing. Whether you need a wider scope, a narrow scope, or a pin jet to remove debris between two confined items and so forth. But remember that there's always a rebound factor. So when you hit something with water, there'll be a rebound factor. The rebound, we combat that by using visors, safety glasses underneath the visor. We'll use our waterproofs, steel cap gumboots, a pair of gloves and earplugs to ensure that debris doesn't get in our ears. So there's a plus with the wearing earplugs is that if there's any rebound or debris floating around, of course, it can end up in your ears, so the earplug will eliminate that. Also too, when you're water blasting, there's a thing called, I mentioned it earlier, a bit of mist. That mist, it's so important that you identify what is on the surface. So let's say, for example, you were washing something down, water cleaning, water jetting, something that was mouldy. You're actually atomizing what's coming off the surface. So if it's mouldy or mildew, it's imperative that you now have to put a respirator on or have an air wash hood or an air wash mask. Because those mould spurs or moss that you're removing, you're atomizing them and putting them in the atmosphere. So you can actually, or you will as a consequence, ingest them. So you're breathing in mould spurs, can make you quite ill. So this is why I keep referring back to the safety aspect of it. What is the consequence of what I'm about to do? Well, I'm water blasting. What is the environment? What am I cleaning? What am I removing? So for example, it's lead, asbestos, all those sorts of things. Identify the substrate before you attempt the water blasting job. And it's the same with all of this equipment. Make sure it complies, it's been checked, and the maintenance is performed periodically within the machine. And then of course I mentioned the daily checks. So let's go back to the nozzles. So on this particular gun, we've got a grey back nozzle, then we've got a red back nozzle, and then we've got another one here which was green. And look, so there's an immense variation in nozzles. So these nozzles here, they're what we call turbo nozzles, or weed cutters, or dirt busters. There's all different types of and variations of names they are. All they are is a spin jet. So when the water comes through the back of here, it hits a planetary, and in that planetary it diverts the water through to gear this particular spin jet, so the jet starts rotating, and they spin at quite a significant rate. So the whole idea of that is that by the rotation, its cutting ability and power is greater. So it's, instead of being a finger jet, it's still a finger jet, but it's doing this with quite significant speed. So the one thing to watch with these fellows is, of course, with all that fine gearing in there, you don't want contaminants in there. And also too, it's not the type of thing that you push debris away with on the end of the lance, because you will damage the outer housing. The moment any of this is compromised by damage, it's no longer usable. It's non-repairable. A lot of them aren't. When you get into the higher pressure stuff like 20, 30, 40,000 psi, they are repairable. These smaller ones are designed to do a specific job, and they last for quite some time if you maintain them. So what would I do to maintain it? Some have nylon gears, some have brass gears. The best thing to do when you're not using it is put a cap in there so that debris can't get in there, dirt and so forth, or just tape it up, both ends. Bit of tape around there, it's all good. But you see these different colours here, they represent what they are. So we've got a 09, a 08, and the one on here, which is 06. So all that's doing is identifying the pressure and an identification number from the manufacturer. So the manufacturer's book tells me what it does. But also too, on all these, and it's mandatory, it'll be written there, maximum 320 bar, which equals 4,500 psi. Maximum 80 degrees C, that's hot water if you tend to put hot water in them. And so on, it tells me the same again, how many psi it is. But also too on these, it's important when you get them new, if they've got a part number on them, write it down. So in my little manual here, I'll write down the part numbers of ancillary items so that if I need to replace them, I've got some information in relation to replacement. It helps when you ring the service desk and say, I need a particular part. You've written it down, you've logged it. Makes it easy for everybody. And that's what life's all about, making it easy for everybody. So let's have a look at this one here. Look, it's a completely different shape. Well, this particular nozzle here is not only a pin jet nozzle, but it also has the capacity to fan for me. So what I can do is put that on the lance and twist it around, and it opens the orifice even bigger. Why would I need that? The main reason I need that is because when it becomes a larger hole, I can actually put on the bottom of this machine a capillary tube, a suction tube, and I can put that into a detergent. It's important that I make sure the detergent corresponds with the manufacturer's recommendations, because you don't want caustic detergents running through your machine, because it'll undermine the integrity of the pump. But normal detergents can be run through this, liquid detergents, sucked up through here when you open this valve or this nozzle to a different setting. So it'll click around and it'll be a larger hole. So what it does is your flow rate remains the same, but the pressure's diminished. And the minute the pressure's diminished, it gives the pump the capacity to suction feed that detergent up through the nozzle, so that you can spray detergent over the substrate and then click it back into place so that you've got a jet and now rinse the detergent off. They're relatively simple, they work well, but again, they must be clean, and always check the detergent container to make sure there's no contaminants in there. So if you do all of these recommendations, comply with the recommendations that I've just set out, You'll ensure the longevity of pump, but more importantly, you'll stay safe. Water's a great tool. It'll never create profile on the surface unless it has a complement of an abrasive with the water stream. But that's an alternate type nozzle arrangement as well. In these smaller pumps, it's what we call a gravity hopper that feeds the garnet in there, which assists in the cut of what's on the surface. But they do a great job there. They have a specific job, and they set out in the manufacturer's recommendations book. Also too, remember, if you lose your book, you can always ring BlastOne and say, guys, I have this particular machine. Can you help me in relation to where I go from here? And they'll see if they can source another book for you or help you out of trouble on the spot. So if you maintain lubricants in it, keep it fueled, keep it level, out of harm's way, you'll get many years of service out of these particular machines. So I hope that you've got something out of that information. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually connect the water, let the water run free flow out of the hose before we connect it to the lance, and then we'll initiate the power stream that this spin jet head has, and we're going to wash another smaller machine here before we start to commence work on that.